And welcome to the Turnaround Talk Show and Podcast. I'm your host, Marcia Tepperman, the creator of the Turnaround Method. And in this show, me and my guests will have fascinating conversations about how to use adversity as a springboard for a thriving life. Today on the show, I have Gary Farrell. Gary is a broadcast journalist from New Zealand. He lives in Hamilton with his partner and stepdaughter. Gary is a host for Hyperlocal, community news for Hamilton locals. And Gary is a dear friend of mine as well. So I'm super thrilled to have Gary on the show today to hear from him how he turned his life around. And I can't put any words to it. He's gonna have to tell us all. And I just want to say that the whole idea of having fascinating conversations about this topic all came from the way to describe it was Gary's words. So I want to give full credit to him. How are you, Gary? Thanks for being here today.
I'm great, Marcia. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story? And you can at one point, if you want to tell them how we met as well, that would be lovely.
Yeah, so me and Marcia, we met a few years ago now, wasn't it? I can't remember, maybe
2015, 2014, maybe?
Yeah.
14.
Yeah. And that was via my cousin who also lives in Australia. And it was really important for us to discuss our experience of having recovered after severe car crashes and all of the different challenges we faced along the way. And in some ways our experiences were very similar, but in other ways they were very different. And that, I think, is a really important structure to show us how differently situations of trauma can affect different people and how differently they can play out. So my story was in February 2007. I had a car crash to the north of Auckland. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I got crashed into by a drunk driver who was heading in the other direction. And I suffered multiple injuries, numerous injuries, I can't even count them, and including most significantly a traumatic brain injury, which results in me having right hemiparesis. So currently the right hand side of my body, I have less control over it. So I'm not fully physically able. But 13 years ago, back when the crash happened, I was just coming up on the end of university and I had this big bright future ahead, and then it all just got put on pause and I had to recover and reconstruct my life from there. And back at the beginning, the right hand side of my body was completely paralyzed. So you can see my brain, my biology has made as much of an effort as I have mentally, but I guess it's the mental challenge that I'm on this podcast to talk about.
Yeah. So you had been in coma for quite some time as well, right? You were in coma after in intensive care for a long time before you started your recovery journey as well. Yeah. So it was quite a severe brain injury as well.
Yeah, I was actually put in a drug-induced coma first off for maybe a week and a half, and then I came out of that, but I was so injured that I couldn't speak, I couldn't breathe on my own, I had a tracheotomy in. Don't know if you can still see the scar there, just about.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's faded off because obviously 13 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was strange waking up into this new body and starting to generate new memories, which started about 3 weeks after the crash, that I've become actually able to create memories. So that's basically 3 years of my life, which is blank now, that I can't remember. because my body and my brain had just withdrawn into themselves to try and repair. So that was very significant when I woke up, and I could see all my family were there with me, but I couldn't communicate with them. Even if the nurses would give me a pad and pen and I tried to write a message, it would come out as gibberish because my brain couldn't relay the message from my mind onto the paper correctly. So that was extremely frustrating. And to add insult to injury, figure of speech, my right hand side, since it was paralyzed and I couldn't use my right hand, I was having to use my left hand to write those messages. And I am naturally right-handed, so it was very, very challenging being there, not able to communicate with people and being trapped inside my head. I had a lot of time to think while I was in hospital, which was for 9 weeks.
Wow. Gary, you left the hospital, and tell us a little bit more about your recovery journey and how you completed university as well. How did that go?
So what I did is I went on my 20th birthday. I got taken in an ambulance door to door from the hospital to a traumatic brain injury rehab centre, which is one of about 3 in New Zealand. It's very, very specialist services and therapy that they give there. There are about 70 other people there, and about 50 of them had been in car crashes as well, I think. And a lot of others had had strokes. So it was quite a scary environment to be in. It was so unfamiliar to me. There was so much horror and struggle going on around me. But by that point, I could communicate, I could speak, and I could develop, plans for what I wanted to do in the future. So I started getting really ambitious, and I told my occupational therapists that before I could even walk, I was telling my occupational, because I had to learn how to walk again. I told my occupational therapists that I wanted to do go to virtual classes and study from in rehab. But I quickly found out that one occupational therapy session and one physiotherapy session each day was enough to completely exhaust me, to the point where I often missed appointments because I just stayed put in my bed because I was so exhausted. And it was such a mission to get up and either get people to take me to the therapies or make the way myself. So yeah, that took 7.5 months that I was living in there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then I went back to university about 5 months after I got out of there. But it was only 1 paper per semester, first off. Whereas usually I would be doing 4 papers per semester. Mm-hmm. So I found that a struggle, even doing just 1 paper, like one stage 1 paper, like a really, really easy entry level paper, like Anthropology 101 or something, when previously I had been doing difficult papers about politics and art history and all sorts of things like that. But gradually, over 2.5 years, I picked up my ability studying. And after 2.5 years, I got my Bachelor of Arts degree, majoring in politics. And that was probably the greatest achievement that I've made in my life, I think. Like, it was very, very important that I passed that hurdle to prove to myself that I wasn't disabled, that I was physically impaired and to an extent cognitively impaired from not being able to alternate between tasks quickly and getting fatigued. Mm-hmm. But graduating from university really told me that I was able to make something of myself. That's what I made it tell me anyway. So yeah, I pushed forward from there, and the journey has been pretty amazing since then, because it was 10 years ago now, almost 10 years, that I graduated from university.
Mm. And I know you have been some radio shows talking about road safety, and you use that platform to help educate people and share your story as well, right? After your recovery.
Yeah, I have done that quite a bit. I've been on the radio, I've been on national TV, and mostly I have done road safety talks to school students and also recidivist traffic offenders. So I did that, and I know I changed a lot of people's lives, including those of traffic offenders. Like, I'm literally friends with them now on Facebook, the ones that make it through that course. They're literally, I used to fly down to Christchurch to do road safety talks down there. And, some rough as people were down there who, had done the wrong thing and had driven drunk, and the police had caught them and then sent them to do the Right Track course. So that's the course that I was helping out with, the Right Track course. I was giving the story of somebody who had been affected by a car crash. And yeah, eventually when I was going down to Christchurch, the organisers weren't having to get accommodation for me. I was literally going and staying with the graduates of the course.
Yeah. So you kind of forced to make friends with them.
Yeah. But like, they had specifically invited me to stay with them because I had changed their lives by telling my story. And that was, really important to me, and gave me an idea that I had power, but to, evoke change.
Yeah.
But the key thing to realize is, by telling my story over and over and over and over and over and over, it was compounding the memory in my head, and also amplifying my idea of the car crash's relevance to who I am as a human being. And as a result, it started making me depressed, because I thought that literally all I was good for in life was like sharing my story and helping avoid other people have similar experiences to me, which is all well and good. Like, I'm really, really, really glad that I was able to do that. But I didn't think very highly of myself, and I didn't think that I was going to be able to, have a family or get a house or move out of home or anything like that. So a couple of years ago, I stopped doing the road safety talks, just because I actually realized after like 8 years that I actually had to focus on myself and my own healing. And all this time, and in all of the road safety talks I had given, I had told the audience, when they inevitably asked me, do you forgive the guy that crashed into you? I said, oh, well, I don't forgive him, but I don't hold a grudge. He didn't intend to hurt someone, and da 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 da. And then I just discovered, as recently as 2018, that I hadn't been blaming the guy who crashed into me. I had been blaming my own body. Like, it had been, that criticism had been totally recoiling back against me and my body, and telling me that I was worthless and that it was my fault, and that, I just may as well sit at home on the benefit or whatever. That was but that was a really important realization, because after that I was just like
free. Like, did you feel free from it?
I definitely did feel free from it, yeah. And then I really went out on a journey of of self-determination, which I have been on as well since 2016, when I moved from my hometown of Auckland to Hamilton, which is just 2 hours away, but it's far enough. It separates me from my family and my friends and my old life, and encouraged me to rebuild a whole new Gary, a strong Gary. And I wasn't like in Auckland, where I was, to people, it's like to people, I seemed like the second Gary. Like there was the Gary before the crash and there was the Gary after the crash.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. But when I came down to Hamilton, I could just come in straight away wearing a smart suit, walking in on my first day of work at the Hamilton News, shaking people's hands with my left hand, which of course is quite unusual to people who are right-handed. And they were very, very taken with me on meeting me, because I was coming in with this swagger and this confidence, even though I had obviously been through a lot. They thought, oh, well, he isn't letting it stop him, so let's just treat him as he is. Like, this is just Gary. So that's the really important thing, that in my new life in Hamilton, I am just Gary. I'm not the Gary after the car crash sort of thing. You know, I'm not defined by it. And with people not defining me by it, it means I'm not defining myself by it. Whereas when people were defining me via my crash, that was making me define myself by it. So that really, really, really wasn't healthy. And I didn't realize. I mean, you know, it was 9 years until I moved to Hamilton after the car crash. 9 years that I was just convinced that I was...
That was all it was.
Yeah, exactly. And when it came around to the anniversary of the car crash each year, it was almost a secondary birthday. Like I'd always give it this day of recognition and this day of sort of mourning for myself. And that's all well and good for a while. I mean, we all need to grieve when major stuff happens. But like, to be grieving every year and just holding up this crash as being the reason I am who I am today, that wasn't healthy. So I'm glad I've got past that.
Wow. Yeah, so we met in 2015, 2014, 15.
Yeah, I think 15.
And when we first, our first contact, I sent you an interview so I could tell your story in my book, Road to Recovery. And so we had a conversation, and I remember at the time when you were still hesitant about leaving home and working full time and all of that. And when I see where you are now, and I just see a transformation, like a completely different Gary, and you're just going from strength to strength. So what changed what changed? How did you make that leap that huge leap into growth?
I think it's basically in 2010, I started traveling on my own. So I traveled in 2010 on my own for the first time. I went from Auckland to Melbourne and stayed there for 2 nights and went to a concert. All of that on my own. I did all of it on my own. And that made me realize that, you know, I was really capable. And then the next year I went to Sydney, and the year after that I went to Canberra and Sydney again. The year after that I went to the Aussie Outback. And then in 2014, 15 and 16, I went to America in all of those years. So that was a really big one. I did do that with my sister, but that was an escalation of it as well. Like me being able to, you know, work with another person of different ability in a situation, you know, like travel where you're just like off in the middle of nowhere. It's like you against the elements. And just when me and Amelia came back from America in 2016, I just thought, oh, right, well, I'm amped up now. I'm like going to really, really try and, you know, try to get ahead in life and to determine myself. And then I looked at the jobs that were advertised on the internet in my first week back. I saw one that was in Hamilton. I had never applied for a job in Hamilton before. I applied for the job. The next day I got called for an interview, and then the next day I drove down to Hamilton, and then the day after that I got offered the job. So this is for a full-time job in Hamilton, which I didn't even know if I would be able to do for sure. But I figured I'd been on all this travel and I'd held myself together. So, you know, hopefully, you know, full-time work will be okay. So there, that was it. It was just like, wow, within a week of coming back from a holiday, I was packing up to go down to Hamilton and start working and move away from my family and friends and finally be me out on my own, you know, living solo, doing everything, learning to cook and, you know, make the beds and everything, do the cleaning, and all the while working a 40-hour week, which I turned out to be able to do. So that that was the thing. I think it was like the travel and the experience that gave me, followed by breaking away from my old life and just saying, you know, going, right, I'm going to take a risk and like really give this a try. And yeah, now here I am. I'm on my 4th job that I've had in Hamilton, because I've been, you know, I've been jiggling around a bit trying to find my ideal place of work, because I know, like, I just love this city and I love the friends that I've made here, but I've got to, I've had to, you know, find my niche, you know, where I really want to be. So I was with 2 newspapers and an advertising company, and then now I've come to rest at Free FM, being a broadcast journalist and program technician there. So that is really, really cool. So I'm totally happy where I am now. I'm also working a freelance job for a local app that also does community news. And so I'm working all up 30 hours a week at the moment and not earning that much per hour, but it's enough to live on. It's enough to pay the bills. And I'm here living with my partner, to who I am engaged, and my stepdaughter, and we're just looking to the future, and it's great, and it's amazing that it happened. But the thing is it amazing? Is it amazing, or was it, you know, for me it feels like I was so far away from this 10 years ago. But maybe it's been, you know, a degree of natural growth from the positive things that I've allowed myself to be exposed to in life.
I think it is, what's amazing is that your willingness to let go of that past identity and then and throw yourself into uncertainty and embrace it, and then challenge yourself each time that there's something new that you want, and embrace it again. So yes, I think we are all, as human beings, we are designed for that. That's how nature works. If you look at even forests, after the bushfire, the bush grows back, and we have this the force of nature inside of us compel us to grow, compel us to go. And it is the stories that we tell ourselves, or the trauma that we suffered, and and the questions we have in our mind that stop us. And it could be depression or anxiety that is a sign that is telling you that you're actually not embracing everything that you are. That's my personal opinion. But I know that there are other theories around this as well, that anxiety might be, a consequence of a person not expressing who they are.
Yeah. I mean, it would be different, and probably a bit different in every person's situation, but I definitely can agree with what you said just then, because I mean, I didn't realize until the end of 2018 or so that I was actually depressed, and I went and applied to the ACC, the Accident Compensation Corporation here in New Zealand, which is the big state insurance body for anyone who's had, a major life-changing accident. And they funded me to go and get a psychological assessment, and they determined that I had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and that I had had it all the time since the crash. But of course, I hadn't addressed that. I had only addressed the physical hurdles and, the societal problems about, how people treat a person with a disability differently. So while doing all of that, I hadn't realized and stopped and thought, and nobody else had pulled me up on it, that I might actually have severe depression. And then, it turned out that I did. And when I started going to see a psychologist, it was really great. And I've just finished seeing her in April, I think, of this year. So I was seeing her for about a year and a half on a fortnightly basis. And it really showed me, how much help I needed in that. But it allowed me to come out of the dark as well. And I mean, that's part of the reason why I am where I am now, with a fiance and a stepdaughter. Like before the crash, I had never kissed a girl, much less had a girlfriend. But now just this confidence has come out, and that lack of trepidation and that self-determination, as I keep saying, and self-assurance. So I'm really, really grateful for everybody who has helped me in the process, and to my body for having guided me in the direction that I needed to in order to get well.
That's so good to hear that, Gary. So what are some takeaways, what are some takeaways from your experience that you wanted to share with someone that perhaps had suffered a traumatic accident or a traumatic brain injury from an accident, but not necessarily a car accident, and they are finding themselves sort of reliving that trauma every year and being defined by the functional impact of their injuries and so on? What would you like to say to anyone who's in that situation, who is feeling called to life but not believing that they can be different?
So I think it's really, really important, first off, as I've discovered recently, to have mindfulness and just feel what is around you, feel where you are in life, feel the good things, and feel what you are able to do. And then you can differentiate out the things which people are telling you you're not able to do, but that you actually can do. Like, for example, an important thing I did in 2009, so 2.5 years after the crash, is I went to a music gig, and my mum was adamant that it wasn't the suitable situation for me to be in. The gig started at like 10 p.m. and went until 1 a.m. and it was in a bar at night, and it was all dark, and I had to go downstairs and everything like that. But I I wanted to do it in my heart of hearts, and I knew that if I really tried, I could do it. So I went and did it, and that was the important event that triggered off my, aspirations to travel, and then eventually actually going out and traveling on a yearly basis for 7 years. Like, so that's the thing. That is the key piece of advice I'd give, is to differentiate between what you can do and what some people say you can't do. Like, because you know yourself better than anyone else. And go out and do those things. Sure, some people might be uncomfortable, or they might think it's strange, depending on what condition you're in or how you approach the situation. But just go do it, and people respect you on the basis of really trying. I think anyone does. The roughest people respect me. Like one of the clients at the Right Track, who I ended up staying at his house like 3 times when I was going down to Christchurch. He had like a biker's beard like this long, and he had tattoos all over his body that were like done at home. Like, he was a hard man. But he came up to me crying after my talk. And it's not like I was particularly dramatic. I was just talking like I'm talking now. But he came up to me crying. And then his partner said to me afterwards, like, he never ever cries. I've literally never seen him cry. And that was of like happiness, because he realized that nothing can stop us, So, if I can be respected by a person like that from a completely different walk of life, and who I wouldn't be friends with normally, if I can get to know that person and they can bring me into their life to the point where I'm staying over the night at their house, then yeah, it shows what confidence does. Confidence in oneself, and just trying and pushing ahead.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned is like the opinions that the well-intended people in your life will have about what you can't or can't do. I just wanted to sort of touch on this a little bit, because when we have a severe traumatic experience like a car accident, the people who love us, they are just as traumatized as we are. Mm-hmm. And as a response, they tend to want to control things, because they want to keep you safe, because that was a moment where they almost lost you. And they love you very much, and that's great. But also sometimes we need to remember that if we want to be who we want to be, we need to challenge them just as we would if we were growing adults, because at the end of the day, that's what we are. If we're growing, adults, and we want to be who we want to be, we're going to have to say to people, I love you for worrying about me, but I am going to try this. I want to show myself I can do this, and then do this, right? Because otherwise who are we going to be for who, if we want to keep everyone safe and at peace in their mind that you're going to be safe because you do what they want.
That's right. Like, you can't, like, those people love you so much that they want to protect you to the point that it impedes your ability to grow. And that's not their fault at all. It is not their fault at all, because they have experienced trauma too. And it's like I often used to say to people about when I was giving the road safety talks, I said, my family were basically more traumatized than me, I used to tell them, because my family, like when I couldn't talk, for example, and I couldn't move, my family didn't know if it was still me inside my head, or if I was like psychologically completely
impacted. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was, and I knew I was me, and I knew I had all the memories of them, and I knew everything was fine, but they didn't know, and that must have been a very scary experience for them. At the same time, I again think I took a bit of credit off myself there, because I was saying my family were more traumatized than me, but they were just traumatized in a different way. I was actually, extremely traumatized. I was, lying there wearing moon boots and casts and having tubes going into me and stuff. And yeah, so that's that's very much the thing.
Yeah, of course it's not. They don't. That's not their fault, and they mean well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just everyone gets traumatized by that experience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Gary, tell us, what did you have to believe to go after the things? Like, if you could say, had to believe in 3 things, what did you have to believe to go after the things you wanted, to have a fiancé today? That's another chapter, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Chapter 1, chapter 2.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely view it as chapters. Basically the Hamilton chapter, because my life started changing so much when I came to Hamilton. But the things I needed were faith in myself, most importantly, just trusting my instincts and where I wanted to go, and not letting anyone tell me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Also, caring for others was really important. So actually understanding that they were having a hard time too. That my friends, it was a very tricky process for them, to suddenly only be able to go out with me, one time a month instead of every night. It was very difficult for them, and that's as well as my family. And then ultimately, perseverance. I just worked on and on and on. And I mean, from 2010 until 2016, I was a volunteer at a student radio station at Auckland University. And I spent like hundreds, if not thousands of hours volunteering there. And it was all to have something on my CV so that I could get a job, so that I could say, I am currently doing this, rather than when they go, so what are you doing at the moment? Just looking for jobs? That's how they sort of judge you. So I thought, like that perseverance. Sometimes it felt really draining working hundreds or thousands of hours without any pay. But I knew that it was the way to get me back, doing what I really, really want to do, which is journalism and broadcasting. And again, that was just perseverance. And I came to meet my fiance Wendy because of that perseverance as well, because of perseverance and faith in myself, really. Because I needed to really jump out there and take that risk. I met her on the dating app Bumble, and it's interesting being on there. And of course, part of the whole other chapter is being a person with a disability on a dating app, because you don't know whether you should say first that you're but she works in the disability sector herself, so she's a completely warm, loving, understanding person who just gives so much to my life, and I can't wait to marry her.
And I can't wait for the day to arrive as well, to see your big smile on a photo, or just yes, so good, so good just to hear the plans that you have. And you became kind of a quite a personality in Hamilton as well. Like you have like a community voice, and yeah.
Basically, it's like I'm a big fish in a small pond.
Mm-hmm.
Auckland is 1.6 million people. Hamilton is 160,000 people.
Yeah.
So, suddenly I was in this place where basically if you're in the journalism sector or the creative sector more broadly, you know literally everyone in that sector in the whole city. It's basically impossible to have not met someone. So I know all the people who manage all the theatres around town and all of the bars that host live bands from other cities. And I of course work at Free FM now as of December, which is the community radio station, and we play a lot of songs by Hamilton artists and really work at promoting them and the venues around town as well. So yeah, it's pretty lovely. And I've got a trike as well, an electric trike, which I've had since September last year, and I ride that around town, so I'm pretty recognisable for that as well. A lot of people have given me a beep of the car horn and a wave when they've seen me riding along the side of the road, because they know I'm the only person with a electric trike. So
That's so cool. That's so cool. Lastly, I just wanted to ask for, obviously we met, and I know that I have given you something to help you, propel you on this journey back then. So just if you could share just briefly, what do you think that was my contribution to you? I know we had one conversation really, but I know that you took something away from it. So if you could share with others, that would be great.
Right. Well, there are so many things that you contributed to me, to my growth in this situation. But most of all, it was really mindfulness and looking on the positive side of what I've got and how I can leverage that to make myself more confident and to grow. And I mean, I remember when you and I were first talking, I was talking about how I still hadn't kissed a woman yet. And then now, look, now I'm sitting in our office at our house. I can hear my stepdaughter going around in the hallway and stuff, chatting to her mama. That really was the thing, is that self-determination and knowing that I was here, it was now, and I had all these tools and opportunities around me, and I could just clear my mind and focus them and use them to truly work towards what I really wanted and I really cared about, because that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about it's about going for what we actually want and what feeds our souls, and sometimes looking at our own rather than those of others. Like, because in a case of mine, like, I'm a very empathic person, but sometimes I needed to give myself some empathy. So yeah,
that's right.
So that's a big thing that I learned from you.
So being I'm getting emotional. Being the person we came here to be.
Yeah.
And the thing is that sometimes we don't see it when it's happening, but our journey is part of who we are. Mm-hmm. So in my case, for example, today I work as a disability liaison officer. I had lived experience with disability. So that makes me, that it is part of who I am. So it's not something to stop me, but it adds to your life experience. It adds to your story. It adds to who you are. And so we all came here to be something good we all came here to live and do something with ourselves. And I think that that's kind of where what you're saying.
Yeah, certainly. Like this, the crash is part of my story, but it's only a tiny, tiny part.
Yes. And I think we talked about this, right? The emotional part of the recovery, that sometimes it isn't even related to the crash itself. It's just our baggage, because we all have those questions, you know, am I loved? Am I enough? And that goes from, you know, anyone, from the most successful person who every time that they need to step up still think that, you know, maybe some don't, some may, but there's always that voice that you have to overcome, and the wounds that we all carry from our families and you know, transgenerational trauma and whatnot. So all of that stuff that is sometimes reenacted with the accident or with the trauma, and that we kind of don't know where one starts and where the other ends. It becomes like a big snowball. And so we need to kind of pull it apart so that we can see things for what they are. But we need to remember that we're not designed to be a bit stagnant in life and stop growing and settle for less. You know, if we lose movement, if we lose our capacity to do one thing, there's always something else we can do. There's a way we can contribute. We can, you know, with who we are and what we can do. So yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah, so for anyone listening, don't let any impairments or anything stop you from achieving your dreams. From me and Gary, we both are advocating kicking your butt.
Yeah, that's right. And everyone should remember that no matter how much adversity you've faced and how much you feel like you're at the bottom of a cliff, everyone is out there there are so many good people out there who genuinely want you to live a good life. And if they see that you're really, really trying, that will feed them with energy, and then they will direct energy back to you to help you. So that is a really important message of mine, I think, that I've learned over the last few years.
Amazing. That's so good. So good to have this conversation with you, Gary. Thank you so much for coming and talking about this topic again. And I know that that's not always easy to bring it up. So I appreciate your willingness to share your wisdom and your experience with other people and inspire others to embrace a journey of growth and possibilities.
Thank you so much for having me again on the podcast, Marcia.
You're welcome. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
The Turnaround Talk Show and Podcast is brought to you by Marcia Tepperman. You can find me on my website www.marciatepperman.com.au, or you can connect with me on social media via Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to being with you again soon.